remarkable thing in itself as well. We are going to be going to our next guest now. We do have with us on the line Dr. Anna Piela. Welcome back to the Drive Time Show. It's been quite a while since you've been with us last.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be on the show again.
Thank you for being with us. You're a feminist and activist and a visiting scholar and author as well. I thought I'd just bring that out for the benefit of our listeners as well. Dr. Piela, can you tell us about what you found while talking to Muslim women in the UK and US about why they choose to wear the niqab? Is it through choice or compulsion, as many people would think?
All the women I have spoken to were adamant that the niqab was their choice, free choice, and they use religious language primarily, and they always insisted that it had taken them a really long time to reflect on the spiritual benefits of the niqab, and after this time of discernment, they would put it on. So it was not a rash decision, as something that is portrayed. The interesting finding that I had from the research was that the women I spoke to recognized that this religious register is very often unintelligible to secular audiences in the UK or in the US, and they also presented additional arguments that you could loosely define as secular. They talked about, the niqab as religious freedom, but also the right to maintain bodily integrity, the right to choose what they want to do with their own bodies and how they want to present their bodies. They also mentioned that the niqab helps them avoid racist and sexual objectification. And quite a few actually mentioned health and well-being benefits. There was somebody who said, I used to suffer from panic attacks, and once I put the niqab on, those attacks went away. And, it really helped with my mental health. And of course, the argument about cultural diversity that is sort of developed, that diversity is important, that we should uphold it. The niqab, what is it? It's not a sign of fantastic cultural diversity in Western society that claim to be tolerant and affirming difference. So that was a really interesting sort of aspect of it. But all the women said the religious reasons were the main ones. They did it to basically be closer to God.
Right, yeah. And, in the West, there's a perception that wearing the niqab is a sign of oppression in Islam. But, this despite the majority of Muslim women, as you just mentioned, constantly declaring that they do so out of free will and personal choice. So, Dr. Anna, why does this perception exist? What is the reason?
Well, from what I have been able to gauge, I think both in Western media and political worlds, criticizing niqab constitutes political capital. Mm-hmm. It pays for politicians, the right-wing politicians, to talk about burqa bans. This also, I think, increases sales of many newspapers. So that's one part of it. But I think that another even more insidious reason is that talking about ostensibly helping Muslim women to sort of liberate themselves from oppression is really diversion from Western government's criminal involvement in the genocide in Syria, the genocide in Yemen, the arms sales, and of course earlier in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I remember one sort of statement made by Barbara Bush in 2001. That American forces are going to Afghanistan to liberate Afghani women from the burqa and from the Taliban. So this is really really insidious, I would say. And the public, of course, are influenced by the arguments that they read about in the newspapers. But I think overall Western societies are still stuck in this Orientalist mindset that denouncing the niqab makes them somehow better citizens or feminists or patriots, when in fact denouncing the niqab achieves the opposite, I think, because it shows people who criticize niqabis as bigots. Bigots who actually want to dictate women what to wear, and that's a patriarchal thing to do.
Exactly.
So yeah, this mindset has a really long history, but I would say this is just a new chapter in that book, so to say.
Okay. And in what way do you think the reluctance of some Western leaders to make the wearing of masks during the pandemic compulsory reflects a prejudice against face coverings? That's seen as oppressive, no?
Well, I think it's a striking example of hypocrisy. And racism and xenophobia, Islamophobia are rarely logical because, both masks and the niqab are meant to cover the face, albeit for different reasons. Yet it's just the niqab that is lambasted for posing a security threat and being, as they say, insurmountable obstacle for communication and social connections, even though in theory the masks cover the face in the same way. So it's clear it's not the actual covering that's the target of this ire, it's the religious reasoning behind it. In this case, Islamic reasoning and convictions and beliefs that are being targeted. So, we end up with this ridiculous situation when in France a Muslim woman may be fined 130 euros for covering her face. Simultaneously, she may be fined 170 euros for not covering her face in public situations. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, in the UK, this was brought into very sharp focus by the actions of the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who lambasted niqab wearers in, I think it was August 2018. And now masks are compulsory on public transport. So I think it's a really good moment to oppose burqa bans in Europe and other countries. And I think all the listeners here to this show who feel strongly about this maybe can tweet at President Macron of France, the Prime Minister Castex, the Belgian Prime Minister Sophie Wilmès, and multiple, I think, European Court of Human Rights, which upheld the French burqa ban following legal challenges made by niqabi women. And tweet Boris too. Why not? He should be shown up for what it is.
No, it's important to raise awareness, as you were saying, and educate people to remove their misconceptions. And you're doing a great job at doing that. And Dr. Anna, the veil is symbolic of maintaining social distance for the morality of society. So, in what way do you feel the pandemic has drawn attention to social and health benefits of this social distance?
So, first of all, niqab wearers who I've spoken to report feeling much safer, more at ease, and less singled out in public contexts. And this is important because, they're suddenly a part of the crowd. They can fly under the radar, which for an average person is something, they might not even think about. That is privilege. These women are always, they're always singled out. And in my article in The Conversation in April, for which a lot of my niqabi friends commented, I reported that they're not only received more positively, definitely plus, but they emerge as experts in nonverbal communication because, they wear niqab day to day, so they know how to do a lot of things. They often say they try to appear more friendly, to diffuse situations. So they're actually really adept at showing emotions and sort of showing their intentions. And non-Muslims, are keen to learn from them in their circles. Although niqab does not give the benefit of a mask in the coronavirus context, because the niqab is, the good niqab allows breathing, and the mask is supposed to obstruct the flow of air to also stop the virus. Still, apparently a lot of women, both Muslim and non-Muslim, have a chance to try the niqab out in a less hostile environment. Women who had been considering adopting it are doing it now because they don't feel so threatened. This was also echoed by women, I think, interviewed by Tasmin Begum for The Independent in an article, Veiled Racism. It was really good.
Right.
I think there's one thing I need to mention is that there's the opposite side of the coin, because there is research from Birmingham City University that Islamophobia is very much on the rise online. So Muslims are accused of spreading the virus. They're accused of not social distancing, going to the mosque, and so on. And racism and prejudice are ugly and persistent and insidious. So, on the one hand, here we've got Niqabi women who report feeling more sort of accepted in society, but racism kind of popped up online during coronavirus.
Yeah.
And in America, in the States where I am living right now, many minority groups are targeted in similar ways. So, Chinese Americans, Jewish Americans, Latino Americans, when in fact it is currently the conservative white Americans who deny the existence of the virus and they refuse to wear masks. And these people are the major spreaders.
Yeah. And in regards to wearing the niqab, you've actually written a book on this, which is in fact called or titled "Wearing the Niqab" itself as well. When you were writing this, how many different women did you speak to? And from, I know we mentioned the UK and US before as well, but from which different backgrounds did they belong to? And what were sort of the similarities that you saw between the different backgrounds and the differences as well, if any?
Yeah, of course there were similarities. My sample, the women I spoke to, were pretty much 50% British Muslim and 50% were American Muslims. And I want to point out that this is the first sort of robust research study that I am aware of that engaged these groups in these countries. And they came from very varied social backgrounds, educational backgrounds. So in the UK, I did my research mostly in the north of England, and I spoke to women sort of between 20 and maybe 60 years old. And they were, professions were such as teacher, driving instructor. I remember speaking to a scientist. There were women who were, there was one radio presenter, and a lot of women were business owners. And there were a few stay-at-home moms, and that's, perfectly good profession and vocation. In America, it was very similar. So a range of professions, similar age range. Mostly, I would say ethnically, they were also split pretty evenly. So I had a group of African American women who were in Niqab, as well as South Asian American women, and also there were white converts who had adopted the Niqab. And one woman I remember was, for example, an engineer who used to work on oil rigs in Texas.
Right.
But the last woman that I spoke to was in fact a former U.S. military who had been on the mission to Iraq. And she was telling me that while she was in Iraq, she knew nothing about Islam, and she saw some women wearing the niqab walking around, but she actually converted to Islam several years later.
All right.
While working with her son on a social studies project. And then she also adopted the niqab, and now she's very devoted niqabi. So she was a really interesting individual. So I tried to have a variety of backgrounds, ethnically and educationally, to have a variety of opinions, just so to be able to say that, there are some similarities, and the religious discourse was definitely they had in common. And also, they all wish that the niqab stopped being such a focus for politicians and the media, that they were just let live and and do what they wanted to do in life without just seeing them as these sort of walking shrouds. Because they all have talents, they all have they have hobbies, they have families, they're people, and so just to talk about these women as simply women who wear the niqab and nothing else is so unfair and so dehumanizing. So they raised that as well.
Definitely. And for those of our listeners who are interested in reading your book, how can they get a copy? So
the book is coming out in February 2021, and it's the title is "Wearing the Niqab: Muslim Women in the UK and the US." Yes, you can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it on Bloomsbury academic websites. But I'm also keen to share extracts and fragments. If somebody just contacts me directly via Twitter, and my Twitter handle is at Piela 999, and I'll be very happy to share extracts with people who are interested in the findings.
Awesome. Thank you for that, and for being with us once again as well, and sharing your thoughts and obviously the thorough research that you've done in this regard as well on women wearing the niqab. Thank you. All the best with your book, and we hope you have a wonderful day ahead.
Me too. Thank you very much.
Thank
it was
you.
a delight speaking with you. Bye-bye.
Likewise. Bye-bye. 0208 687 7878. That was Dr. Anna Piela, who's a feminist and activist, visiting scholar and author as well, sharing her thoughts with us. And of course, she's done so much research on especially women from the UK and US wearing the niqab as well. So it was a brilliant discussion having her on with us as well. Before speaking to her, we were speaking about modesty and about parda and why it's so controversial as well. And Danish, you answered this very eloquently as well. And the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, he also stated that these days the veil is being attacked, but these people, they do not know that the veil, it doesn't mean oppressing oneself, it doesn't mean to imprison women or anything of that sort, but rather the actual meaning behind this, or the reasoning behind